I'm Xana Furtado. I am a master's student in the Brazilian Literatures program, and I graduate in April. I am studying Maria Firmina dos Reis. So I really love 19th century archival work, especially regards women.
My name is Jordan Jones. I'm an assistant professor of Brazilian literature and culture here at BYU. My area of specialization, I focus on 19th century anti-slavery work in connection with 21st century works about race and racism, and trying to bridge the gap between the two. Today we are setting up an exhibit on Maria Firmina dos Reis in the HBLL library. It's a small case exhibit. We have 2 cases and then a couple of timelines that are going up just to introduce people to her life, her works, and then her rediscovery after about 100 years of being forgotten.
Maria Firmina dos Reis is Brazil's first female novelist. She's especially significant because she's the first female novelist, but also because she was one of the few big writers, well-known writers of the time, who was forgotten. So for more than 100 years, she was forgotten. And then a researcher was in a used bookstore in Rio, and he came across her novel, and that's how she was rediscovered. I took 2 classes from Dr. Jones where we read her first novel, and the first time reading it, I liked it. I didn't think much of it though. I think I quickly moved on to something else. But the second time we read it, I was really shocked by the words, and then learning more about her in the context of 19th century female writers, right? So she's extraordinary. Not just for her time, she's extraordinary in general, but especially when you consider the context that she was living in. So I wanted to learn more about how a woman was able to publish in the 19th century and the challenges she faced, and kind of contextualize her a little bit more. So I think that's kind of what sparked my interest with the project.
I mean, first off is to come to the exhibit, obviously. In the exhibit, we have several of her works, and one of which is, for those who speak Portuguese, there's a biography, 2 biographies of her. The first one that was launched in 1975, and then one from 2022. And those that don't speak Portuguese, there's an English translation that came out a couple of years ago of Ursula, her novel, and so I would start there.
My thesis focuses on her novella Eva, which is an indigenous woman and a French sailor and their love that ends in tragedy. So that's something I would recommend for Portuguese speakers. And also just learning more about her as a person. So slowly we're learning more about her life and the way she was a school teacher and things like that. So I think there's lots of videos online and YouTube videos and resources like that, as well as her actual reading and her actual literature that she wrote. I'm biased because it's my thesis, but I love Eva. I'm doing a genetic critique, so it's where you compare the different versions of something. So I have been comparing the 3 original publications that came out during her life, and I've grown to have such a love for the way she writes, the way everything's so planned out. She has a way with adjectives. She's a poet, right? So you'll see in our exhibit there's some poetry she uses, but even in a novel, she has such poetic, beautiful adjectives that she adds in.
Maria Firmina, to me, I think, is just a wonderful example of trying to make the world a better place in starting with a local context, in terms of small actions, small acts of solidarity with enslaved people, with Afro-Brazilian people, and I think she's a leader in anti-slavery work, in anti-racist work, and also feminist work in terms of elevating the people around her, whether that's through her writing or her teaching or just her actions. I think she's a wonderful example of how to use art and literature to evoke empathy in those around her.
Maria Firmina means that we're able to accomplish whatever we want, regardless of our societal standings or of our circumstances. For me, she's a big inspiration as a female. It's hard being a 21st century woman sometimes in male-dominated areas and fields. So I can't even imagine what she went through in the 19th century society. So I think she instills that other females, we can accomplish the things that we're wanting to accomplish, and regardless of our situations or our circumstances or our education or where we're getting our education, we can make real changes in the world. Sometimes you see pieces of paper inside a display case, and you think, oh, that must just be so easy that it gets there. And that wasn't the case with our exhibit. It's been about a year in the making. When I originally approached that, we talked about opening an exhibit and having some form of exhibit, and logistically everything's been hard. I think it's logistically a hard process to schedule out. A lot of these things are planned years in advance, location wise. Logistically, with editing documents, with making sure the captions are correct, that everybody likes the captions, that everybody likes the edits. There's lots of things that go into it. I was more in charge of the creative directing design parts of the exhibit. So the timelines that you'll see above the cases, that was all me. Editing the photos, that was me. Whereas Dr. Jones has taken over more of we've used his English skills, and he's been able to edit things. He's come up with the majority of the captions, editing things and making sure that everything grammatically was flowing as well. And then Matt's been a part of our online course, our online component. So it's very important to us that this isn't just up for a month or two and then everybody forgets about Maria Firmina dos Reis. Especially here at BYU, it's important that we are always archiving these things ourselves and continuing towards our future generations that will look back on things like this. So he's been in charge of making sure that we're preserving this in an online format. I think they can expect to feel inspired. I think that's the number one message when I was thinking about things. I wanted to get a few messages across. I wanted to get that Maria Firmina dos Reis was an abolitionist. I wanted to get across that she was a female who overcame incredible challenges. And then the third thing, that she didn't come from perfect beginnings. Her mom was an ex-slave. She describes her own education as not something eloquently done, or she didn't have the best life circumstances, but she was able to rise above. So I hope everybody leaves the exhibit feeling a little bit more inspired, and that if she was able to do things, everyone else is able to do things and accomplish their dreams as well. There is a birth justification document. Maybe this is one of my favorites because it's a little polemic. But when Maria Firmina dos Reis went to run to be a public school teacher, and it's a long, big process to work in government or public positions in Brazil, and it was at the time still. And she was the only one out of all those people who tried who actually was able to get a teaching spot the year that she applied. And they told her that she wasn't old enough to get the spot. So not only has she been accepted, but then they say, oh, after seeing her birth certificate, that she's not old enough. And she supplies a baptismal record stating that she actually was sick, and that the day she was registered as her birthday is not actually her birthday. And some people have determined this as maybe her cheating the system a little bit. And other people have said maybe this is actually true, and maybe she really was sick as a child, and maybe she was just telling the truth and she really was of age. Either way, I think it shows Maria Firmina dos Reis' dedication, that she was willing to accomplish the amazing things. And I don't think it draws her down as a pioneering figure at all. If anything, I think it boosts her up. I think my favorite part was definitely being in Rio in the archives and being able to learn a little bit about Maria Firmina dos Reis, and it's kind of like a puzzle, putting pieces together. She was only rediscovered in 1975, so there's still lots that's being discovered, and it was very cool to be in the archives and feel like I'm a piece of some of those discoveries.
Just getting to know Maria Firmina a little bit better, we had the chance to go tour her hometown, Guimarães, where she taught and wrote and lived for 70 years, and that was really cool to be able to imagine a little bit better what her life would have been like. And working with the students was great, and just seeing them take charge, especially Xana, was super helpful in finding materials and helping the other students get their bearings and know how to proceed with their work. So I would say those two things. So the exhibit is located on the south wall of the 5th floor of the library. We invite you to come see it. There's also a QR code at the exhibit, which will take you to a website where there's a little bit more information. and you can look at the documents a little bit more clearly. And just thank you. It's been a ton of fun to think through this exhibit and imagine it with Xana, and I'm really grateful for her work.